The ancient oaks of Oakhaven leaned in, a verdant tunnel through which Alara's little car puttered, as if entering a secret world. Sunlight dappled the winding lane, painting shifting patterns on the moss-kissed stone walls that lined the road. Petals, pale pink and ivory, fluttered from unseen branches, dusting her windshield like forgotten confetti. It was late spring, and the air, even through the rolled-down window, carried the sweet, earthy scent of damp soil and burgeoning blossoms. Alara Vance, with her practical gardening gloves tucked into the passenger seat and a half-read botanical journal on the dashboard, felt a familiar flutter of anticipation in her chest. For years, she had chased the whispers of forgotten gardens, her passion lying not just in the science of flora, but in the stories they held. And the story of Thornwood Manor, specifically its legendary rose garden, was a siren song she hadn't been able to resist. Oakhaven itself seemed to hum with a quiet, ancient magic. Cottages with thatched roofs huddled together, their window boxes overflowing with geraniums. A small, bubbling stream gurgled beside a miniature stone bridge, and a distant church bell chimed the hour, a sound so mellow it felt woven into the very fabric of the air. Alara smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her hazel eyes. This was exactly the kind of place she had dreamed of finding. A place where time seemed to slow, where the earth breathed deeply, and where, perhaps, a long-dormant dream of her own might finally take root. She followed the directions, which led her past the village green and up a narrower, less-traveled lane, shaded by even older, gnarled trees. The air grew cooler here, thick with the scent of pine and something else. Something subtly sweet and wild, like neglected roses. A wrought iron gate, half hidden by ivy, eventually appeared, bearing a tarnished brass plaque. Thornwood Manor. Alara took a deep breath. This was it. The drive wound upwards, gravel crunching under her tires, past fields gone wild with wildflowers, and then into a denser copse of trees. Finally, the canopy opened, revealing the manor itself. Thornwood wasn't grand in an ostentatious way, but it possessed a quiet, stoic beauty. Built of dark local stone, with mullioned windows and chimneys that rose like silent sentinels, it felt less like a house and more like an integral part of the landscape. Ivy clung to its walls in places, not aggressively, but like a gentle embrace. It was clearly old, deeply rooted, and wore its history with a dignified grace. But it wasn't the manor that drew her gaze first. Her eyes were immediately pulled to the left, to a vast, sprawling expanse beyond what looked like a crumbling stone wall. This was it, the legendary rose garden. Or what was left of it. It was a wilderness. A beautiful, untamed wilderness, but a wilderness nonetheless. Rose bushes, many of them towering and thick-stemmed, had surged past their trellises, their thorny canes intertwined with wild honeysuckle and clematis. Some had climbed high into the nearby trees, their branches laden with a few tenacious late-blooming roses that glowed like jewels against the dark foliage. Weeds grew knee-high, obscuring paths that were clearly once meticulously kept. Overgrown hedges formed a tangled labyrinth. Yet, even in its wild abandon, there was a palpable sense of majesty, a whisper of past glory. The air here was thick with the heady, complex perfume of hundreds of different roses, a scent so rich and intoxicating it made her head spin a little. It was the scent of forgotten beauty, of life stubbornly persisting. Alara parked her car near a small stone cottage nestled to the side of the main manor, clearly designated for her use during her stay. Before even thinking of unpacking, she stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. She walked towards the edge of the rose garden, her fingers itching to touch the leaves, to feel the ancient wood of the stems. She saw hints of what it once was, the remains of a circular fountain, now dry and filled with moss, the ghost of a stone bench, half swallowed by thorns, the intricate patterns of what were once paved paths, now cracked and choked by weeds. This wasn't just a job, it was a pilgrimage. Alara had read about the thornwood roses in old botanical texts, heard whispers of their rare varieties and unparalleled fragrance. It was said that the estate's founding family, the Thorns, had cultivated roses for centuries, each generation adding to the collection, until it became one of the most renowned private gardens in the country. Then, about 50 years ago, something had shifted. The last dedicated gardener had passed away, and the garden had been left to its own devices, slowly surrendering to the wild. A wave of both excitement and daunting challenge washed over her. This wasn't going to be a quick trim and tidy. This was a grand restoration, a resurrection. It would require patience, knowledge, and a deep understanding of what lay beneath the tangle. It would require heart. She spent a good hour just walking the perimeter, peering through gaps in the overgrown hedges, trying to discern the original layout. Her mind was already cataloging, planning, sketching mental diagrams. She imagined the paths cleared, the roses pruned and trained, the fountain flowing again. She envisioned the garden in full bloom, a tapestry of color and scent, a living testament to the passion that had created it. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and soft purple. A gentle breeze rustled through the ancient trees, carrying the faint, sweet chime of the village bell once more. Alara knew she should unpack, settle in, prepare for the monumental task ahead. But she couldn't tear herself away from the garden's silent invitation. It felt like a sleeping giant, waiting for her to wake it. Finally, with a sigh that was half contentment, half sheer exhaustion, she turned towards the little stone cottage. It was charmingly rustic, with a small porch and a window box already bursting with spring flowers, a welcoming gesture from someone. Inside, it was simple, but comfortable. A small living area with a fireplace, a compact kitchen, and a cozy bedroom. A note on the table, handwritten in elegant script, read, "Welcome to Thornwood, Alara. There are fresh eggs and bread in the kitchen, and the local pub, the Whispering Willow, does a fine supper. Please make yourself at home. Julian Thorne, Julian Thorne." Julian Thorne. The current owner. She hadn't met him yet, only communicated through his estate manager, a rather brisk but efficient woman named Mrs. Davies. Alara had gathered that Mr. Thorne was a reclusive sort, deeply private and fiercely protective of his ancestral home. He had agreed to the garden's restoration with some reluctance, according to Mrs. Davies, only after being persuaded of its historical significance and potential for preservation. The note was a small, unexpected kindness, a hint of a warmer personality than she had been led to expect. She unpacked slowly, arranging her books, her drawing pads, her various tools. The cottage quickly began to feel like her own, infused with the scent of old paper and the subtle floral notes that clung to her clothes from the garden. That evening, she ate the fresh bread and eggs washed down with a cup of herbal tea and read by the soft glow of a lamp. Her mind, however, kept drifting back to the riot of the roses, the challenge, the promise. She fell asleep to the distant hoot of an owl and the lingering scent of earth and old roses, dreams already weaving patterns of green leaves and vibrant petals. The next morning, Alara was up with the sun. She dressed in sturdy jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, and her worn leather boots. After a quick breakfast, she gathered her tools, pruning shears, loppers, gloves, a small hand trowel, and headed straight for the garden. The morning air was crisp and cool, the dew still clinging to the wild grasses. A light mist hung in the air, softening the edges of the manor and the surrounding trees, making the world feel hushed and ancient. As she stepped into the garden, she felt an almost sacred silence, broken only by the chirping of unseen birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. She decided to start with a section near the main entrance, where a particularly dense thicket of brambles and thorny rose canes blocked what looked like an old stone archway. She worked methodically, carefully, her movements precise and practiced. The sheer amount of overgrowth was daunting, but Alara found a meditative rhythm in the work. Each snip of her shears, each tug of a stubborn weed, was a small victory. Hours passed. Her muscles ached, but it was a satisfying ache, a testament to her efforts. She peeled off her gloves, revealing dirt-stained hands, and wiped a bead of sweat from her brow with the back of her wrist. She had managed to clear a significant patch, revealing the graceful curve of the archway and the faint outline of a path beneath the debris. Beneath the layers of neglect, she could see the potential, the elegant bones of the garden emerging. She paused, taking a sip from her water bottle, admiring her progress. A robin, emboldened by her stillness, hopped close, cocking its head at her. Alara smiled. It felt good to be here, to be doing this work. It was then that she heard it, a soft rustle, almost imperceptible, from deeper within the garden near the manor. She straightened up, her heart giving a small, curious thump. She hadn't seen anyone else on the estate since her arrival, not even Mrs. Davies. A figure emerged from the dense foliage, walking with a quiet grace that seemed almost to glide over the uneven ground. He was tall, dressed in dark, unassuming clothes that blended with the shadows. His hair was the color of rich earth, falling a little long around his ears, and his eyes, even from a distance, seemed to hold a deep, contemplative gaze. He carried a small basket, and his hands, she noticed, were also stained with soil. He moved towards a particularly ancient-looking rosebush, one whose canes were as thick as her arm, and knelt beside it. He didn't seem to notice her at first, or if he did, he made no sign. He gently examined the bush, his fingers tracing the thorns, then carefully plucked a single velvety red bloom, its petals still heavy with dew. He brought it to his nose, inhaling its fragrance with a reverence that Alara found surprisingly moving. He had a quiet intensity about him, a stillness that made him feel like another ancient part of the garden itself. He wasn't overtly handsome in a conventional way, but there was an undeniable magnetism to his presence, a profound connection to the earth around him. Alara hesitated, unsure whether to announce her presence or to simply observe. She was, after all, an intruder in his private world. But then, as if sensing her gaze, he slowly straightened, turning his head. His eyes, a shade of deep moss green, met hers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air thrummed with unspoken questions. Alara felt a blush creep up her neck. She suddenly felt acutely aware of her dirt-stained clothes, her messy ponytail, the slight smudge of earth on her cheek. "Good morning," she finally managed, her voice a little softer than she intended. "You must be Mr. Thorne." He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. His gaze was steady, assessing, but not unkind. "And you must be Alara Vance," he replied, his voice a low, melodic rumble, like stones shifting in a quiet stream. There was a gentle, almost hesitant quality to it, as if he rarely spoke aloud. "I trust you found the cottage to your liking?" "Yes, thank you. It's perfect," Alara said, feeling a strange mix of nerves and a growing sense of ease. "And thank you for the welcoming note. And the eggs. They were delicious." A faint, almost shy smile touched his lips, transforming his face, softening the intensity in his eyes. It was a fleeting thing, but it sent a surprising warmth through Alara. "You've made a start," he said, gesturing towards the cleared patch she had worked on. His tone held a hint of approval. "I have," she confirmed, feeling a surge of pride. "It's a magnificent garden, Mr. Thorne, even in its current state, full of potential." "Julian," he corrected, his gaze still on her, a flicker of something unreadable in his green eyes. "Please, call me Julian." "Julian," she repeated, tasting the name. It suited him, she thought. Ancient, yet grounded. "And you can call me Alara." He nodded again, then looked back at the rose he held, its red petals vibrant against his skin. "This one," he murmured, more to himself than to her, "is a crimson thorn. My grandmother's favorite. It's been almost lost to the brambles." Alara's eyes widened. "A crimson thorn? I thought those were incredibly rare now, a true English damask." Her voice was filled with genuine excitement. To find it still thriving here, even wild. Julian finally stepped closer, holding out the single rose to her. "You have good eyes, Alara. Most wouldn't know it." She took the rose, carefully, her fingers brushing his. His skin was rough, calloused, like a gardener's or a craftsman's. The scent of the rose, close up, was even more intoxicating, rich, sweet, with a hint of spice. "It's exquisite," she breathed, bringing it to her own nose. "Thank you." "It's a gift from the garden," he said, a quiet amusement in his eyes. "A welcome of sorts." He stood there, a silent sentinel, watching her, and Alara felt a peculiar sense of being seen, truly seen, not just as a professional, but as someone who understood the language of the plants. His presence was calming, yet intensely compelling. "I imagine you have many more such treasures hidden here," Alara said, her gaze sweeping over the wild expanse. "I can't wait to discover them." "The garden holds many secrets," Julian replied, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "And many memories." His eyes for a moment held a hint of melancholy, a shadow that seemed to deepen their green. Alara felt a gentle tug of curiosity, a desire to understand the quiet man who stood before her, who held such a profound connection to this wild, beautiful place. She sensed that beneath his reserved exterior lay a depth of feeling, a tapestry of stories waiting to be unraveled, much like the garden itself. "I hope I can do them justice," she said, looking down at the perfect crimson rose in her hand, then back up at him. The garden, and its memories. Julian's gaze lingered on her, a slow, thoughtful consideration. Then, a faint, genuine smile touched his lips once more. "I believe you will, Elara," he said. "I believe you will." He turned then, with that same quiet grace, and began to walk deeper into the garden, disappearing once more into the verdant labyrinth, leaving Elara alone with the scent of the crimson rose, the warmth of the sun, and the echo of his words in the morning air. She stood there for a long moment, the rose held carefully in her hand, a new kind of anticipation blooming in her heart. This place, and its silent, watchful owner, promised to be far more enchanting and far more complex than she had ever imagined. The petals, she mused, were only just beginning to fall, revealing what lay beneath. The petals, she mused, were only just beginning to fall, revealing what lay beneath. Elara's fingers traced the silken edge of the crimson rose. Its scent was heady, deep, a promise of hidden passions. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle breeze rustling the leaves around her, and a strange, quiet hum within her own chest. Liam. The name was a soft whisper in her mind. He was an enigma, a man of quiet intensity and unexpected warmth, much like his garden. The brief encounter had left her with a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, a gentle curiosity mingled with a profound sense of peace. This wasn't the bustling city she'd left behind, nor the polite, predictable society she'd grown accustomed to. This was something wilder, more authentic, and deeply captivating. She carefully tucked the rose into the waistband of her skirt, its vibrant color a stark contrast to the pale linen. The desire to explore, to lose herself in the beauty around her, was irresistible. She wandered deeper into the verdant labyrinth, following winding paths that disappeared beneath archways of climbing roses and overhung with fragrant jasmine. Each turn revealed a new wonder, a hidden fountain where water whispered over moss-kissed stone, a sun-dappled glade filled with ancient gnarled olive trees, a vibrant bed of irises in every shade of purple and blue, their velvet petals unfurling in the morning light. Elara found herself smiling, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. She felt like an explorer in a forgotten world, each discovery a small triumph. She noticed the meticulous care evident in every detail, not just the grand design, but the perfectly pruned hedges, the carefully mulched flower beds, the healthy sheen on every leaf. This garden was Liam's heart made manifest, a testament to dedication and a profound love for beauty. It spoke of patience, of slow, deliberate growth, of a deep understanding of nature's rhythms. Hours passed like minutes. The sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the canopy. Elara eventually found herself in a quieter part of the garden, a small, enclosed space behind a high stone wall, where a simple wooden bench sat beneath a weeping willow. It was secluded, peaceful, and felt like a secret sanctuary. She sat down, taking a deep breath of the cool, damp air that lingered there. The rose, still fragrant, rested against her hip. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the garden wash over her. The distant hum of bees, the rustle of leaves, the soft gurgle of unseen water. She thought of Liam again. His eyes, the color of deep moss, held a certain melancholy, a quiet watchfulness that hinted at stories untold. Yet, when he smiled, it was like a sudden burst of sunlight. He was not like the men she had known, those who courted with practiced ease and empty flatteries. Liam was real. And in this realness, Elara found a surprising comfort. A soft rustle from the other side of the stone wall startled her. She opened her eyes, listening. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moved along a path she hadn't discovered yet. She heard the distinct snip of secateurs, the gentle brush of leaves, and then a low, melodic hum. It was a man's voice, a tuneless, contemplative sound, but unmistakably Liam's. He was working, probably unaware of her presence so close by. A warmth spread through her chest. It was a simple, domestic sound, yet it felt intimate, a glimpse into his quiet world. She resisted the urge to peek around the wall, choosing instead to savor this private moment, this shared unspoken tranquility. When the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and rose, Elara reluctantly made her way back towards the cottage. She felt refreshed, invigorated, and strangely hopeful. The small thatched roof of her temporary home seemed to beckon, no longer a temporary refuge but a welcoming haven. As she reached the garden gate, she paused, looking back at the labyrinth of green and bloom. It was still there, vast and mysterious, promising more wonders. She touched the rose, its petals now slightly softer, and smiled. The next morning, Ilara rose with the sun, a lightness in her step. She dressed in a simple cotton gown, its color the pale green of new leaves, and decided to venture out again. This time she wasn't just exploring, she was hoping. She carried a small sketch pad and a charcoal pencil, a habit from her youth that she'd neglected for too long. Perhaps, she thought, this place would inspire her to draw again. She walked a different path today, one that led her towards a gentle rise in the landscape, crowned by a stand of ancient oak trees. From there, she could see a broader expanse of the garden, stretching out like a tapestry of greens and golds. Below, nestled amidst a grove of towering cypresses, she spotted a small glass house, its panes glinting in the morning light. It looked like a jewel box, hinting at delicate wonders within. As she drew closer, she saw him. Liam. He was inside the glass house, his back to her, tending to a row of potted plants. The morning light streamed through the glass, illuminating the fine dust motes dancing in the air and casting a halo around his dark hair. He moved with a quiet grace, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he carefully pruned a leaf or adjusted a tiny stake. Ilara hesitated, unsure if she should approach. He seemed so absorbed, so at peace in his sanctuary. But then, a delicate, fragile sound reached her ears, the gentle chime of small bells. She realized he was humming again, the same soft, tuneless melody she'd heard yesterday. It was a sound of contentment, of utter absorption. Taking a deep breath, she walked slowly towards the open door of the glass house. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam started, dropping a tiny watering can with a soft clatter. He turned, his eyes widening slightly as he saw her. A faint blush rose on his cheeks, a charming contrast to his quiet demeanor. "Miss Ilara," he said, his voice a little gruff, as if he hadn't used it in a while. He quickly bent to retrieve the watering can. "I hope I didn't startle you," she said, feeling a pang of guilt. "I saw the glass house and couldn't resist. It's magnificent." He straightened, offering her a shy smile. No, not at all. You're welcome to explore. It's just, I rarely have visitors." His gaze drifted over her, lingering for a moment on the sketchpad in her hand. "Do you draw?" "I used to," she confessed. "This place, it feels like it could wake up forgotten parts of me." She gestured around the glass house. "What beautiful treasures do you keep in here?" "Orchids, mostly," he replied, his voice softening, his shyness momentarily forgotten as he spoke of his passion. "They are delicate, temperamental things, but their beauty, it's worth the effort." He gestured to a shelf filled with orchids in various stages of bloom, their petals a riot of impossible colors, deep purples, fiery oranges, pristine whites streaked with emerald. The air was warm and humid, thick with the sweet, exotic scent of the flowers. Ilara walked deeper into the glass house, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're breathtaking, Liam. Each one is a miniature masterpiece." She reached out a hand, almost touching a vibrant fuchsia orchid with speckled petals, then hesitated. "You may touch them if you wish," he said, sensing her restraint. "They enjoy gentle admiration." She carefully brushed a petal, marveling at its velvety texture. "They feel as delicate as they look." She turned to him, a genuine smile lighting her face. "You truly have a gift, not just for growing them, but for creating this entire world." His gaze met hers, holding for a beat longer than was strictly necessary. "It's my life's work," he admitted, his voice low. "My sanctuary." "I can see why," she murmured. "It's peaceful here. You feel a sense of purpose." She thought of her own life, the endless social engagements, the superficial conversations. It felt hollow in comparison. He seemed to sense her introspection. "And what brings you to such a quiet corner of the world, Miss Ilara? I gather you are accustomed to more bustling surroundings." She chuckled softly. "You're very perceptive, Liam. I suppose I was looking for a change, a different pace, My aunt, Lady Beatrice, suggested I take a sabbatical, as she called it, and enjoy the countryside. She's always spoken highly of this estate." She paused, then added, "And perhaps I was looking for something I hadn't quite named yet." He nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "The countryside has a way of revealing things to us, doesn't it? Things we didn't know we needed to see." He picked up a small brush and began to gently dust a leaf of a nearby orchid. "Lady Beatrice is a very dear friend. She often speaks of your spirited nature." A faint smile played on his lips. Elara felt a pleasant warmth at his words. "Spirited? I suppose that's one way to put it. Sometimes I think she means I'm simply too opinionated for polite society." Liam's smile widened, a genuine, unburdened expression. "I find spiritedness refreshing." The air between them seemed to shimmer, charged with an unspoken understanding. Elara felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "This glasshouse, it's like stepping into another world. Do you spend all your days here?" He shrugged. "Much of them. The garden requires constant attention, and the orchids especially demand specific care. I find solace in it, a quiet purpose." "I can understand that," she said, thinking of her own neglected artistic pursuits. "It must be incredibly rewarding to see something you've nurtured bloom so beautifully." He looked at her then, his gaze direct and intense. "It is. But sometimes, it's even more rewarding to share that beauty." He gestured towards a small, delicate orchid, its petals a pristine white with a single crimson splash at its heart. "This one is particularly rare. It bloomed just this morning." Elara moved closer, captivated. "It's exquisite, like a drop of blood on snow." "It reminded me of the rose I gave you yesterday," he said, his voice soft. A quiet strength beneath a delicate exterior. Her heart fluttered. He remembered the rose. He remembered Hare. The compliment, subtle as it was, warmed her to the core. "It's beautiful," she repeated, almost a whisper. "Thank you for showing it to me." "It's my pleasure," he replied, his eyes still on her. "Perhaps you would like to sketch it." He nodded towards her pad. "I would love to," she said, her voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. She found a small stool nearby and sat down, carefully opening her pad. As she began to sketch, tracing the delicate lines of the orchid, Liam returned to his work, but his movements were slower, his gaze occasionally drifting towards her. The quiet hum of his song returned, a gentle melody that filled the glasshouse, weaving itself into the scent of orchids and the gentle scratch of her charcoal on paper. They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable silence, a shared space of quiet creativity and gentle companionship. Elara felt a sense of ease she hadn't known in years, a feeling of being truly present, truly herself. She sketched not only the orchid but Liam too, capturing the quiet intensity in his eyes as he tended to his plants, the strong line of his jaw, the gentle curve of his smile when he thought no one was watching. When the sun was high, casting long shadows across the glasshouse floor, Liam finally spoke. "It's nearly midday. Would you care to join me for a simple lunch? I usually eat in the potting shed. It's nothing grand, but it's cool and quiet." Elara looked up from her sketch, surprised but delighted. "I'd like that very much, Liam." He led her out of the glasshouse and along a narrow winding path hidden by tall trellises of clematis. The potting shed, when they reached it, was not what she expected. While clearly functional, with shelves of terracotta pots and bags of soil, it also had a worn wooden table set with two mismatched chairs, a small vase holding a single perfect white rose, and a window overlooking a sun-dappled pond. Jow. It was rustic, charming, and utterly authentic. Liam placed a basket on the table. "I prepared something simple: bread, cheese, some fruit from the orchard, and a flask of lemonade." He poured the lemonade into two chipped ceramic mugs. "It's perfect," Elara said, taking a seat. The simplicity of it was refreshing. They ate slowly, talking easily. Elara found herself telling him about her childhood, her love for art, the stifling expectations that had led her away from it. Liam, in turn, spoke of his family, the generations who had tended this estate, his decision to dedicate his life to the garden after his parents passed. There was no grand drama, just quiet devotion. "My parents loved this place deeply," he said, crumbling a piece of bread. "They taught me everything, but they also taught me the importance of finding your own path, even if it's a quiet one." He looked at her directly. It seems you are searching for yours now. Perhaps, she admitted, feeling a rare vulnerability. I've spent so long trying to fit into a mold. I'm not sure who I am without it. He reached across the table, his fingers gently touching the back of her hand. His touch was light, tentative, yet it sent a jolt through her. Then this garden, Miss Alara, is a good place to discover that. It teaches patience. It teaches you to shed what does not serve you and to bloom where you are planted. His words resonated deeply within her. She looked at his hand, warm and strong against hers, then up into his earnest, kind eyes. A silent understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared journeys, even if their paths had been different. As the days turned into a week, Alara's initial anticipation deepened into a profound connection. She spent every morning in the garden, often finding Liam already at work. They would share breakfast in the potting shed, their conversations stretching longer and growing more intimate with each passing day. He showed her hidden corners of the estate, a secret grotto where ferns grew wild, a crumbling folly overgrown with ivy, a winding river that bordered the property, its banks lined with ancient willows. Alara found herself drawn not just to the beauty of the garden, but to the quiet strength and gentle wisdom of its keeper. Liam, in turn, seemed to unfurl in her presence. His shyness, while still present, was tempered by a growing ease. He laughed more often, a deep, resonant sound that surprised and delighted her. He listened to her stories with an unwavering attention that made her feel truly seen, truly heard. One afternoon, they were walking along a path lined with fragrant lavender bushes, the air thick with the scent of summer. Alara had been telling him about a particularly frustrating social event from her past. It felt as though everyone was speaking a different language, she explained, gesturing animatedly. A language of veiled insults and thinly disguised ambitions. I felt utterly. Liam stopped, turning to face her. He reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch light as a butterfly's wing. You were not lost, Alara, he said, his voice soft, using her first name naturally for the first time. You were simply in the wrong garden. You were meant for a place where authenticity is nurtured, not stifled. Her breath hitched. The intimacy of his gesture, the tenderness in his voice, the profound understanding in his words, it all conspired to make her heart ache with a sweet, unfamiliar longing. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, and saw a reflection of her own longing in his moss-green gaze. He seemed to lean closer, his eyes searching hers, a question in their depths. The scent of lavender mingled with the faint, earthy fragrance of his skin, and the world around them seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a moment of fragile, beautiful possibility. Liam, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He didn't speak, but his thumb gently caressed her cheek, sending shivers down her spine. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with the tender unfolding of hearts that had, perhaps, been waiting for each other all along. The sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows across the path, bathing them in a warm, ethereal glow. The garden, their silent confidante, seemed to hold its breath, watching. A sudden, distant chime of a clock tower broke the spell, a gentle reminder of the world beyond their intimate bubble. Liam slowly lowered his hand, a hint of regret in his eyes, but also a quiet promise. It's getting late, he said, his voice a little rough. The air grows cool. Alara nodded, her own voice caught in her throat. The moment had passed, but the unspoken feelings lingered, vibrant and undeniable. They walked back towards the cottage in a comfortable silence, the space between them now filled with a new, exquisite awareness. That evening, Alara sat by her window, the crimson rose from their first meeting, now dried and pressed between the pages of her sketchpad. She looked out at the moonlit garden, a place that had seemed so mysterious and vast just a week ago, but now felt like home. She thought of Liam, of his quiet strength, his gentle hands, his profound love for the beauty around him. And she thought of his words, "You were meant for a place where authenticity is nurtured, not stifled." Way. A deep sense of peace settled over her. This garden, and the man who tended it, were indeed awakening something within her, something true and vital. The petals, she knew, had fallen, revealing a heart that was open, vulnerable, and ready for whatever beautiful complexities lay ahead. Eleanor felt the gentle warmth of the evening sun on her skin, a comforting balm after the day's revelations. She lifted her gaze, finding Liam watching her from across the rose beds, a soft smile gracing his lips. There was an understanding in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the shift within her that she hadn't needed to articulate. It was as if he could see the unfurling of her spirit, just as he saw the silent growth of every blossom in his care. He crossed the distance between them, his steps light on the grass. "You look at peace," he observed, his voice a low, melodic hum that resonated with the evening stillness. "I am," she admitted, a genuine smile blooming on her face, brighter than any she'd worn in years. "More than I've been in a very long time." She looked around the vibrant tapestry of the garden, then back at him. "It's your doing, you know. This place. You." Liam chuckled softly, a sound that always managed to chase away any lingering shadows. "I just plant the seeds, Eleanor. The growth, the blossoming. That's all you." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray petal from her hair. A touch so fleeting yet so tender it sent a shiver of warmth through her. "Though I admit," he continued, his eyes twinkling, "I've found a certain satisfaction in watching you unfurl day by day." They stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken emotions, with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the earthy perfume of the soil. The world outside the garden's wall seemed distant, irrelevant. Here, in this sanctuary of life and beauty, Eleanor felt truly seen, truly valued, not for what she could achieve or possess, but simply for who she was, or rather, who she was becoming. "Tell me about it," she prompted, her voice soft. "Tell me about the process, about how you nurture something from a tiny seed into all of this." She gestured expansively at the flourishing garden around them. Liam's expression softened, his gaze sweeping over his life's work with a profound affection. "It's about patience mostly," he began, his voice taking on the quiet reverence she had come to associate with his passion. "And understanding. Each plant, like each person, has its own needs, its own rhythm. Some thrive in the sun, others in shade. Some need constant attention, others prefer to be left to their own devices, just checked on now and then." He paused, his eyes finding hers again. "You listen to them, you watch, you learn their language, and then you give them what they need to flourish." "And what if they're stubborn?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her tone. "What if they resist nurturing? What if they've been in the wrong soil for too long?" She wasn't talking about plants anymore, and he knew it. Liam's hand gently cupped her elbow, a comforting, grounding touch. "Then you find a way to gently loosen the old soil," he said, his voice imbued with a quiet wisdom. "You introduce new nutrients, slowly. You prune away what's no longer serving them, even if it feels harsh in the moment, knowing it's for greater health. And sometimes," he added, his thumb stroking her arm lightly, "you just have to wait. Trust that if you provide the right environment, the inherent will to grow will eventually take over." His words were a balm to her soul, an echo of her own journey. She thought of the arid, competitive landscape of her previous life, the constant striving, the pressure to conform, to present a perfect, unblemished exterior. It had felt like being planted in concrete, her roots struggling to find purchase, her true self wilting under the weight of expectation. Here, with Liam and his garden, she was finding fertile ground, rich with possibility. They decided to stay in the garden a little longer, watching the stars begin to prickle the deepening indigo sky. Liam led her to a small weathered wooden bench tucked away beneath a sprawling wisteria vine, its fragrant blossoms cascading around them like purple rain. He pointed out constellations, told her stories of ancient stargazers and mythical heroes, his voice weaving a tapestry of wonder and calm. Eleanor found herself sharing snippets of her own life, things she hadn't spoken aloud in years. Not the polished, curated anecdotes she used to offer at cocktail parties, but the raw, honest feelings. The quiet discontent beneath the veneer of success, the gnawing sense of emptiness despite having everything she was supposed to want. She spoke of the relentless pursuit of perfection, the fear of showing any weakness, the way she had gradually lost touch with her own desires. Liam listened without interruption, his gaze steady, his presence a comforting anchor. He didn't offer solutions or judgment, just empathy. When she finished, a profound sigh escaping her lips, he simply reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. His skin was warm and calloused, a testament to a life lived in harmony with the earth, a stark contrast to her own smooth, pampered hands. "It takes immense courage," he said softly, to even acknowledge those feelings, let alone to step away from a life that, on the surface, seemed to offer everything. To choose authenticity over comfort, even when it's scary. It was terrifying, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. It still is, sometimes. The uncertainty, the not knowing what comes next. But look what you've found, he murmured, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. Look at the peace you carry now, the light in your eyes. He squeezed her hand gently. That's worth more than any gilded cage, wouldn't you say? She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just a gardener, but a man of profound wisdom and gentle strength. A man who saw her, truly saw her, in a way no one ever had before. More than anything, she confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. The next few days unfolded with a quiet rhythm that Eleanor found herself increasingly cherishing. Each morning, she woke with a sense of anticipation, eager to join Liam in the garden. She learned to prune roses, her fingers carefully navigating the thorns under his patient guidance. She helped him deadhead spent blossoms, understanding now that this seemingly small act allowed the plant to channel its energy into new growth, new blooms. She learned to mix soil, to identify different types of beneficial insects, to appreciate the delicate dance of an ecosystem thriving under careful stewardship. They talked, sometimes for hours, about everything and nothing. Liam shared stories of his childhood, growing up in a small village nestled amongst rolling hills, his early fascination with the natural world. He spoke of his mentors, old gardeners with gnarled hands, and even gnarleder wisdom, who had taught him the secrets of the earth. He spoke of loss, too, of the quiet grief of watching beloved plants succumb to disease or harsh weather, and the resilience needed to begin again. Eleanor, in turn, found herself opening up further, sharing more about her dreams, the forgotten passions she was rediscovering. She spoke of a childhood love for painting, a talent that had been set aside for more practical pursuits. She mentioned a yearning to create, to bring beauty into the world in a tangible way, a stark contrast to the abstract, often sterile world of her previous career. One afternoon, while they were transplanting a bed of young lavender, Liam paused, wiping a smudge of dirt from her cheek with his thumb. "You know, Eleanor," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I think you have a gardener's soul." She laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "May? I used to be terrified of getting dirt under my nails." "It's not about the dirt," he countered, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's about the intention, the care, the desire to nurture life. I see it in how gently you handle these seedlings, how you instinctively know where to place them, how you're already anticipating their needs." He paused, a serious glint in his eyes. "And it's about transformation, taking something small and helping it reach its full potential. You have that in you." His words resonated deeply. She realized he wasn't just talking about the plants. He was talking about her. As the weeks turned into a month, Eleanor found her hands growing stronger, her movements more confident. The slight stiffness in her shoulders that had been a constant companion for years began to ease. Her skin, once pale and meticulously protected, now had a healthy, sun-kissed glow. She felt more connected to her body, to the earth, to the rhythm of life itself. One evening, after a particularly satisfying day of planting new rose bushes, they sat on the porch swing, sipping herbal tea Liam had brewed from herbs grown in his own garden. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the symphony of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. "I've been thinking," Eleanor began, her voice quiet, "about what you said, about pruning away what's no longer serving. I think I need to do some pruning of my own." Liam turned his head, his gaze gentle and encouraging. "Oh, my old life," she elaborated, looking out at the darkening garden. "There are still connections, obligations, things I haven't fully let go of. People who still expect me to be the old Eleanor." She sighed. "It's like trying to grow a beautiful new blossom while still tethered to old dead roots. It takes energy away from what truly matters now." He reached out, taking her hand in his again. "It's a brave step, Eleanor, but a necessary one if you want to truly flourish. Sometimes, letting go is the most profound act of self-care." "I know," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "And I feel ready. This place, being with you, it's given me the courage to do it." The following days were filled with a different kind of work for Eleanor. She spent hours on her laptop, drafting emails, making phone calls, slowly but surely untangling herself from the remnants of her past. There were difficult conversations, some confusion, even a little hurt from those who didn't understand her radical shift. But with each call, with each email sent, a lightness settled over her, a feeling of liberation she hadn't dared to dream of. Liam was her silent pillar of support throughout this process. He would bring her cups of tea, offer gentle words of encouragement, or simply sit nearby, tending to his own tasks, his steady presence a constant source of comfort. He understood that this wasn't about running away, but about running wide towards something truer, more authentic. One evening, after she had finally sent the last difficult email, closing the door on a significant part of her former life, she walked out to find Liam sitting on the back steps, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. "It's done," she announced, a profound sense of relief washing over her. He looked up, a warm smile spreading across his face. "And how do you feel?" "Lighter," she confessed, settling beside him. "Like a weight has been lifted, like I can finally breathe without effort." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Liam, for everything, for helping me find my way back to myself." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her jaw, his thumb stroking her cheek. His gaze was intense, tender, filled with a warmth that made her heart flutter. "You were never lost, Eleanor," he murmured, his voice a soft rumble. "Just dormant, waiting for the right season to bloom." He leaned closer, his eyes asking for permission, and Eleanor instinctively leaned in to meet him. Their lips met in a soft, tender kiss, a kiss that tasted of garden earth and sweet tea, of quiet understanding and blossoming hope. It wasn't a demanding kiss, but a gentle exploration, a confirmation of the deep, unspoken connection that had been growing between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, their eyes met, filled with a shared wonder. A new layer of intimacy had been added to their already profound connection, a physical manifestation of the emotional journey they had undertaken together. "I should tell you," Liam said, his voice a little husky, his thumb still tracing patterns on her cheek. "I've been doing some planning for the autumn. There's a section of the garden I've always wanted to dedicate to wildflowers, native species that thrive here. It'll require a lot of groundwork, preparing the soil, sowing the seeds. It's a long-term project." Eleanor listened, her heart swelling with a quiet joy. She knew what he was really asking, though he hadn't put it into words. He was talking about a future, about shared work, about a life woven into the fabric of this beautiful, nurturing place. "I'd like that very much," she replied, her voice soft with emotion. "I'd like to help you plant them, Liam, and watch them grow." A genuine, radiant smile lit up his face, a smile that spoke volumes of his happiness. "Good," he said, his eyes crinkling. "Because I was hoping you'd say that." The next few weeks passed in a joyful blur of shared tasks and deepening affection. Eleanor found herself not just helping Liam, but actively contributing, her ideas for design and arrangement blending seamlessly with his deep knowledge of horticulture. They spent hours together, planning the wildflower meadow, sketching out designs, discussing soil amendments and seed mixes. It was a collaboration, a true partnership, and Eleanor felt a creative spark ignite within her that had long been dormant. She even started sketching again, inspired by the vibrant colors and intricate forms of the garden. Liam encouraged her, setting up a small easel for her on the porch, often bringing her cups of tea while she worked, occasionally offering gentle observations that would spark a new idea. Her art was raw, unpolished, a stark contrast to the precise corporate presentations she used to create, but it was hers, and it felt profoundly freeing. One particularly warm afternoon, they were working side by side, preparing a new bed for some perennial herbs. Eleanor was digging, her movements fluid and strong, when she unearthed a small, smooth river stone, perfectly oval and a deep iridescent blue. "Look at this," she said, holding it out to Liam. "It's beautiful." He took it from her, turning it over in his calloused palm. "It is," he agreed, his eyes thoughtful. "A piece of the past, unearthed. It's been here for a long time, watching everything change around it." "Like me," Eleanor murmured, a wistful smile on her face. "A stone, buried, waiting to be found." Liam looked at her, his gaze intense. "And now you are found, Eleanor, and you're shining." He placed the stone back in her hand, closing her fingers around it. "Keep it," a reminder of where you've been and how far you've come. She clutched the stone, feeling its cool weight, a tangible symbol of her journey. It was true. She had been buried in a way, under layers of expectation and artificiality. But here, in this garden, with Liam, she was being unearthed, polished, and allowed to shine in her own unique way. Life in the cottage and garden settled into a comfortable rhythm. They cooked together, simple, wholesome meals made with fresh produce from Liam's vegetable patch. They read aloud to each other in the evenings, curled up on the sofa, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. They took long walks through the surrounding woods, discovering hidden streams and ancient trees, their hands often finding each other naturally. Eleanor found herself noticing details she would have once overlooked. The intricate pattern of a spider's web glistening with dew, the distinct calls of different birds, the subtle changes in light as the seasons began to turn. Her senses felt heightened, her awareness expanded. She was truly present, living in the moment, a stark contrast to her previous life, which had always been about planning for the next big thing, the next achievement. One morning, Liam suggested they visit a local nursery to pick up some new varieties of herbs for the kitchen garden. Eleanor eagerly agreed. As they browsed the rows of young plants, their leaves a vibrant tapestry of greens, she found herself pointing out plants she recognized, asking informed questions, feeling a genuine connection to the botanical world. "You've learned so much," Liam observed, a proud smile on his face as she discussed the merits of different mint varieties with an elderly nursery attendant. "It's hard not to," she replied, her gaze sweeping over the abundance, "when you have such an excellent teacher." She reached out, gently touching the soft leaves of a lemon verbena. "And when the subject is so inherently beautiful." As they drove back to the cottage, the back of Liam's old pickup truck, filled with fragrant pots, Eleanor felt a profound sense of belonging. This wasn't just a temporary escape, it was becoming her life. The quiet strength of Liam, the nurturing embrace of the garden, the gentle unfolding of her own spirit, it all felt right, deeply and profoundly right. She looked at Liam, his profile etched against the passing landscape, his hands resting easily on the steering wheel. He was humming a low tune, a simple melody that perfectly captured the contentment of the moment. She realized, with a rush of warmth, that she loved him. Not just the idea of him, or the peace he brought her, but him. His quiet wisdom, his gentle hands, his unwavering dedication to beauty and life, his profound capacity for love. The admission, though unspoken, settled in her heart with a quiet certainty, like a newly planted seed finding its perfect spot in the earth. It wasn't a dramatic, overwhelming revelation, but a gentle, steady understanding, like the slow, inevitable unfolding of a beloved blossom. They arrived back at the cottage, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the garden. The air was filled with the scent of freshly turned earth and the sweet perfume of the herbs they had brought home. As they began to unload the truck, Liam paused, looking at her, a question in his eyes. "Eleanor," he began, his voice soft, "there's something I've been thinking about. This place, it's been just me for a long time. But now," he gestured vaguely around the garden, then back at her. "Now it feels like it's meant to be shared, with you." He stepped closer, his hands gently taking hers. "I know things have moved quickly, and we're both still finding our footing. But I feel a profound connection to you, Eleanor, a sense of peace and joy I haven't known before. And I can't imagine this garden, or my life, without you in it." Eleanor's heart swelled with a mixture of joy and tenderness. She had felt the same, of course, but to hear him articulate it, so simply and sincerely, was deeply moving. "Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I feel it too, more than you know." He smiled, a genuine, open smile that reached his eyes. "Good," he said, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "Because I was hoping you might consider staying. Not just as a visitor, but as a part of this place. A part of my life. We could build that wildflower meadow together, and so much more." Eleanor looked around the garden, at the vibrant life bursting from every corner, at the ancient trees standing guard, at the cozy cottage that had become her sanctuary. She looked at Liam, his eyes full of warmth and hopeful anticipation. She thought of the river stone in her pocket, the symbol of her unearthing. Her heart felt full, open, and ready. "Yes, Liam," she said, her voice clear and steady. Yes, I would love that. More than anything. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her close, and Eleanor rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was a rhythm that felt perfectly aligned with her own, a melody of home and belonging. The garden around them seemed to hum with approval, the evening breeze rustling through the leaves like a soft, knowing whisper. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of earth and Liam, and felt a quiet, profound certainty settle over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was her true north, her fertile ground. And the journey, she knew, was only just beginning, filled with endless possibilities, like the countless seeds waiting to sprout in the rich soil of their shared future. The quiet certainty didn't dissipate when Liam finally pulled back, a soft, reverent smile on his lips. His thumb brushed her cheek, tracing the lingering warmth. "Clara," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against the evening air. I think I've found my fertile ground too." She leaned into his touch, her heart overflowing. "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a long moment, simply existing in the newfound space between them, a space now brimming with unspoken promises. Eventually, Liam gently took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Come," he said, his eyes sparkling. "Let's make some plans." The plans weren't grand pronouncements, but a gentle unfolding. Their days began to weave together like the intricate patterns of a Celtic knot. Liam would arrive at Clara's bakery in the mornings, often with a handful of dew-kissed herbs or a basket of sun-ripened berries from his garden, his presence a quiet, grounding anchor amidst the flower dust and the cheerful chaos. He'd sip coffee while she kneaded dough, offering observations about the morning light or a new variety of rose he was cultivating. His presence was a balm, a steady hand that helped her navigate the busy mornings with a new sense of calm. Clara, in turn, found herself drawn to the peaceful rhythm of his nursery. She'd bring him warm pastries, fragrant with cinnamon or lemon, and watch him work, marveling at the patience and intuitive understanding he had with every plant. She learned the names of roses, the needs of different soils, the quiet language of growth that spoke volumes about Liam's soul. He learned the precise moment to add zest to a lemon tart, the art of a perfectly crisp croissant, the comforting ritual of baking that filled her life with purpose. Their evenings were filled with simple joys, shared meals cooked with ingredients from his garden and her pantry, long walks through the lanes as dusk settled, hands clasped, comfortable silences punctuated by soft laughter and whispered dreams. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams for their businesses, their fears, their hopes. Clara discovered Liam's quiet passion for sustainability, his desire to create a community garden, his gentle wisdom that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Liam saw Clara's fierce independence, her boundless creativity, her deep well of empathy that extended to every crumb and every customer. One crisp autumn evening as they sat by the fire, the topic of the future arose more explicitly. Clara had been offered a chance to expand her bakery, perhaps even open a second location in a bustling nearby town. It was an exciting prospect, a testament to her hard work, but it also meant less time, more stress, and a potential distance from the quiet life she had built with Liam. She saw the flicker of concern in his eyes as she spoke, even as he nodded encouragingly. "It's a wonderful opportunity, Clara," he said, his voice gentle. "But what does your heart tell you?" Clara sighed, leaning into his shoulder. "My heart tells me I love baking, and I love the idea of sharing it with more people. But it also tells me I love this quiet life. I love coming home to you, and I love the smell of your garden in the evening." Smell of your garden in the evening. Liam wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. "What if," he began, his voice thoughtful, "what if we found a way to make both grow? What if the expansion wasn't just about Yuri Bakery, but about Guri vision?" The idea sparked in Clara's mind like a tiny, brilliant seed. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice hushed with anticipation. "Imagine," Liam mused, looking into the dancing flames, "a space where your incredible baked goods are made with produce from a dedicated garden, perhaps even a teaching garden, for others to learn about growing their own food. A place where people can come not just for a loaf of bread, but for a sense of connection, a taste of sustainability. We could call it the Fertile Ground Bakery and Gardens." "Whoa." Clara sat up, her eyes wide, reflecting the firelight. It was more than an expansion. It was an evolution. It was a fusion of their two worlds, a living testament to their shared values. It was Mirai legacy. The thought sent a thrill through her, a sense of rightness that resonated deep in her bones. Liam, she breathed. That's perfect. And so, the fertile ground bakery and gardens became their shared project, their living, breathing dream. It wasn't an overnight endeavor. It took months of planning, hard work, and countless cups of coffee shared over blueprints and seed catalogs. They found an old dilapidated property on the edge of town, with ample land for a market garden and a charming rustic building perfect for a bakery and cafe. Clara designed a menu that celebrated seasonal ingredients, creating pastries and breads that sang with the flavors of Liam's harvests. Liam meticulously planned the garden, envisioning rows of vibrant vegetables, fragrant herb beds, and a beautiful cutting garden that would supply fresh flowers for their tables. They worked side by side, their hands often brushing as they discussed designs, their laughter echoing through the empty rooms, their spirits buoyed by the certainty that they were building something truly special together. The day they finally opened, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the freshly painted sign. The aroma of baking bread mingled with the scent of blooming lavender, drawing people in. Customers flocked to them, drawn by the unique concept and the palpable warmth that radiated from Clara and Liam, a quiet joy that was infectious. Years passed. The fertile ground flourished, becoming a beloved hub in the community, a place where food and nature intertwined, just as Clara and Liam's lives had. They married in the very garden they had nurtured. Beneath an archway adorned with roses Liam had grown specifically for the occasion. Their vows were simple, heartfelt promises of continued growth, unwavering support, and endless love, whispered amidst the gentle buzzing of bees and the rustle of leaves. One evening, long after the last customer had left, and the stars began to prickle the inky sky, Clara and Liam sat on the porch swing of their small cottage, now nestled beside the thriving gardens. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her. The scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted on the gentle breeze, mingling with the earthy perfume of the soil. "Remember that night?" Clara whispered, her voice soft with contentment. "In your old garden, when I felt like I'd found my true north?" Liam pressed a kiss to her hair. "I remember, and I remember thinking I'd found mine too. Who knew that true north could be found in the rich soil and in the heart of a baker?" Clara smiled, a deep, peaceful smile. Their journey had indeed been one of endless possibilities, each day a new seed planted, carefully nurtured, and brought to bloom. Their love, like the fertile ground around them, was constantly growing, ever abundant, a testament to the beautiful, quiet magic of finding where you belong. She closed her eyes, feeling the gentle rhythm of his breath, the warmth of his presence, and knew, with every fiber of her being, that this was home. And it was, truly, a dream come true.